Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamit in Highland Park, New Jersey at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Emet. And joining me are my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Sheikh, the Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed in New York City. We're recording this on day 19 of the new war. Of course, mourning the loss of 6 more American soldiers, air service people in the various branches. A war that's complicated, but that we hope will end soon. And of course, we are recording this also with the sense of solidarity with everyone in Israel who is experiencing missile fire, especially people in the north. Today, an unusually high number of rockets and missiles directed against the north, and thankfully no casualties that we know of. Lots of damage. So we are always, as always, expressing our solidarity and our experience of the unity of the Jewish people. We are a unique people. Liot beruach she'anachnu am miuchad. I think that's one way to cope with this, to know that there's something very special about us, that we're all connected. And that's how we want to begin this. We are talking about Parashat Vayikra. We're starting a new book of Vayikra. We're also coming close to Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Pesach. So we might veer into a number of topics here. Just as an opener, we got to mention that Vayikra is an amazing parsha, because it is. But it's hard to relate to. Especially since it reflects a world that is no longer available to us. So I'm gonna just pitch this slow ball to you, Rabbi Barry Chesler, because this is something that you like. You like this parsha.
I like the Parsha and I like the book, and I love teaching about sacrifices because I think when all is said and done on a moral, ethical spectrum, despite some significant differences, a lot of ethics in the monotheistic faith is similar. What distinguishes us is the ritual, and especially the ritual that defines the sacrifices is an important part of what made the Israelite, and their descendants, the Jews, the Jews. And therefore, I see it as an entree into a world of ritual that can enrich our lives if we try to understand what motivated our ancestors to sacrifice animals and vegetables in this way.
So I'm with you there on all of that, and I would just like to be brought along from the yuck factor. I don't really
Well,
have a much more articulate.
you don't want to teach it with pictures.
Well, maybe we should take it with pictures, and maybe, you know, when I get immersed in these topics, I do get immersed in the details of it, and the details are fascinating.
And you are the vegan who does like
And I'm the vegan who does,
the
yes.
butchering
And
videos.
look, I mean, it's there's slaughter here. There's designation of the animal.
Well,
We're
the
talking,
yuck factor is the blood ceremony, that's for sure.
but I'm trying to enter a world in which that's not yucky. In fact, that's the whole point of it. The whole point of
So
it is
yeah,
that we are, sprinkling blood of animals on the altar as a way of signifying life and continuity and mystery and the point between life and death. No?
just a couple weeks ago in Parshat Mishpatim, when at the climax of the covenant ceremony, we talked about this
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago in Mishpatim. At the climax of the covenant ceremony, there's sacrificed animals. Moses takes half the blood and puts it on the altar, and half the blood and splashes it on the people. And we observed, I forget exactly what it was. I think Ramban, although it could have been a different commentator, emphasized that signifies that the God, in the represented as the altar, and the people have an equal stake in this covenant. If not exactly an equal, that that the covenant belongs to them because the blood is the life, as the Torah says in any number of contexts. The blood is the life, and I am, while I'm not sorry that our practice today in 2026 is not, the ancient practice. I'm pleased that we, Neshama Parim Sifatenu, already back in Hosea, it says we will replace the prayers of our lips for the bulls, which I think for the cows. I think already back in Hosea there was a sense that offering our lips instead and prayers instead of the animals is in some ways elevating, but I am, like Barry, kind of carried away by the life and death aspect of this ritual. I think that the probable very great rarity of people eating meat, uh, I don't exactly know, in the pastoral society or the agricultural society, I think it made it special. I think that especially, I was talking about Passover, it's coming up. What is the thing about Passover? It's the communally bonding meal of eating the lamb together. And you can't eat them until shchitat chulin, purely non-ritualized slaughter comes along in the book of Devarim in Deuteronomy. The only eating of meat was in this ritual, and so it provides social communion for the participants. It has the power of the life and death, and then just and then just the power of the blood splashed. And then one last thing, which is that especially if you have done something, a chatat or an asham worthy action, you have some significant sin. This is a ritual which, for the ancient person, enables you to express your guilt, your remorse, and get right with God. So the part of the magic for the ancient person, and we don't exactly have to feel, we can't exactly feel how they felt, but if you had the chatat, you brought your chatat, the purification offering or sin offering, you brought your asham, your guilt offering for having done something that was compounded by your lying about it, which is the typical mode for the asham. Um, you're alienated from God, and you bring it and you designate the animal and you put your hands on it and say, in some respects, and I'm paraphrasing out of Nachmanides, I really deserve terrible punishment. In your great mercy, God, you have allowed me to transfer this punishment to the animal. And really, this is a symbol for offering my own life, offering myself. And I find that pretty mythically powerful and poetic, admittedly, because I am looking through the prism of 2,000 years of not doing it. And again, I'm okay with that. But I still think that somebody in 2026 can look back and intuit why those things worked for
So,
ancient
so
Israelites.
on the question of the chatat, which is a sin offering, it's so as you speak, and I'm thinking about the trajectory of this kind of public confession of a sin and its atonement and the way that a person can ritualize the the tr- the 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 transition from that sinful state to an atoned state, and all the way to Christianity, where confession takes place, or Catholicism takes place in private, and it's locked in the box basically between you and a priest, and there is a kind of sacred ritual that takes place in there. Uh, but I'm wondering, again, I want to see the individual and the individual story. I mean, a person who let's say he's atoning for the sin of, I don't know, I did not return my neighbor's uh, you know dishes, right? And I have to make a public declaration of that, and there's a lot of shame in that, and I want to navigate the shame of public admission of sin with the possibility of you know amnesty, I suppose,
So,
in the temple.
what I would say, picking up on something that Jeremy said, is that I think it's quite powerful that the Israelites lived in the community where there were people whose basic job was to get them right with God. And rather than shame, I would focus on guilt, because this is a society where the guilt can be mediated and remediated, meaning that the guilt need not paralyze you because there's a process for getting rid of it by sacrificing an animal.
So, okay, so what we have then is the creation. I guess you could call Vayikra the architecture or the menu or the how the system is structured, and that there is this idea that a person is going to come into the system and wants to come close. I read a comment today that Vayikra is the first place where you have this notion of korban relating to I am coming close. Up until Vayikra, you have Olah and you have Zevach in the stories of Breshit and Shmot, Shlamim. But this is the notion that you have an institution, the Mishkan, however temporary it is, means that people would want to. It means that you now have a way of coming close. And I thought that was a lovely idea that korban itself as a word doesn't enter the Torah until this time. We have a few occurrences of it in Bamidbar also. Korbano, the series of gifts of the tribal chieftains, lots of korban there. But the idea that this suggests what happens when you create an institution. People are going to want to come into it, as opposed to Breshit and Shmot, where there are no institutions. There's no organized. I hate the expression organized religion, but it's the truth. There is no organized religion. This is really organized religion. When people say, and the reason why I hate it is because, you hear people say, oh, I don't like organized religion. I don't like organized religion. And I'm going like, you
Where
don't
would we
like.
be without organized
Sure.
religion?
Not only that, but do you like theater? I like theater. Can just theater happen without organization? Can politics happen without organization? Can anything happen without a structure? And so,
Well, there are people who like to live off the grid, but it does leave a lot to be desired for most of us
okay,
because
so
we're social animals.
yeah, so but here Vayikra then we could argue is a stage in the evolution of the people of Israel from nomadic tribes organized around clans and families to an institution which is mediated by priesthood and situation of sacrifice. So now we have, this is the drama. How do you move from, spontaneous religion to organized religion? How do you move?
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
go on, John.
Well, I mean, I think that's, a great question. And I certainly think that the theater analogy, the politics analogy, all those things are true. Um, and you know what else is true? Religion that is totally private. In the famous book Habits of the Heart by Robert Bellah, he talks to people about religion in the 1970s and 80s, and there's this character Sheila who says,
Sheila.
religion for me is just that still small voice of conscience. I guess it's really Sheilaism is my religion. Well, that cannot be shared with anybody. You cannot have a religious community of Sheilaism. It's only shared because we have commonly held practices and values and stories, and that's why Passover, as we're about to describe it, is so is so important. I also want to. I was talking with one of my upcoming bar mitzvah boys, not this week, but the following week for Tzav, and we're talking about the demand. And I think the sacrificial system, you may find a yuck factor, and it is bloody, and clothes were not multicolored. They didn't have black clothes; they had white clothes. So I'm sure that they looked like butchers back in the old days with smeared bloods on their white aprons. Um, but it's a kind of art, and doing it perfectly is to the best of your ability, making something beautiful of it. And we talked, Jacob Brieger and I, my upcoming bar mitzvah, we talked about the pasuk from Malachi. Says, God's upset. You offer a blind animal, you offer a lame animal, you offer a sick animal to me. You think that just any old gesture is okay. And okay, just okay is not okay. The sacrificial system, in its precision, in its artfulness, bloody though it may be, is a command to try to do something perfectly, try to do something with skill, try to do something with high intentionality. To take a much less, gross set of examples. Look, I don't think it's immoral to play music out of key, but nobody wants to listen to music played out of key. It doesn't sound good. I don't think it's immoral to paint badly, but it's because people paint so exquisitely that you look at it and say, well, that is well done. So I do think that the sacrificial system creates an avenue in which the worship is done as in the most refined possible way. And I think that probably in any context, whether that is, tap dancing, which is my wife's great pleasure in life, great passion in life, or whether it's, playing Bach and with a great big orchestra or whatever, people appreciate expertise, skill, mastery. And I think that the Kohen in those beautiful outfits, wearing the bejeweled Choshen HaMishpat with the fancy turban, with Kodesh Ladunai written on the crown, I kind of feel like people would have appreciated that this is excellent.
I'm glad we stumbled on this theme, okay? Because it suggests to us, a different way of translating what is arcane and remote from all of us in our culture to something that we can readily understand. I like your analogies of, the word fitly spoken, the music fitly, beautifully played. There is something to amateurness. We can all appreciate amateurs and the effort. I mean, there's great joy in watching a high school musical because you see the enthusiasm, but you know that it's not professional. I had the opportunity to I went to the Zamir concert on Sunday. You know what? It was just gorgeous. Okay, and it was wonderful. The music was amazing, and the kids were amazing, and there were a couple of standout voices that could easily take their place, at Lincoln Center. Okay, but there's something that's joyful about the fact that it's, a bunch of kids coming together. They have structure, and they've created culture out of it. And so the tension then from the end of Shmot, whereas everything is finished, to the Vayikra, which is now here's what you do with it, is the tension of going from the unstructured, primitive form of spontaneous worship that we see with Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah and elsewhere, to you have a place and you have an altar. It has a certain dimensions, and there's a certain way to go up it, certain way to go out, certain way to cut the animal, certain way to split the blood, and all the stuff that can drive us crazy, but have a real important. I think so. This is a good way to segue into a little bit of Pesach, because after all, if one of the themes here of Vayikra is a certain set of orders, and here's a missile warning, a certain set of order, then Seder is about order, Pesach is about order, and I just want to kind of ask you, what do you, we're a couple of weeks away from it. It's now the time to think about it. I want to suggest 4 categories: kashrut, the menu. What happens at your Seder? It's like a Jeopardy. Kashrut for 100, the menu. How do you plan your Seder? And who is going to be there, or what's new? What would you include to make new as you brainstorm about this, as you think about this? What are you thinking? How are you thinking about Pesach this year, and how are you approaching it? I'll pitch my idea first as you
Okay, to get the ball rolling.
I want to talk about L'saper b'yetziat Mitzrayim, and I'm stumbling on that phrase because it sounds awkward to me, and it occurs only 3 times right at the beginning of the Magid. Chol ha'marbeh l'saper b'yetziat Mitzrayim. So, our little digging into the philology of speaking about something or telling about something, and that action of telling. I want to unpack that. What is it? And I'll turn to you, Barry. What is telling about for you? What's going on in telling?
So that's an excellent question. So to combine categories, we use a different night as our Haggadah. We've been using it, I guess, must be already 15, 20 years. And what I found over time is there is a kind of familiarity that warms me from reading the same passages over and over again. When we first started using it, obviously it was all new. Now, a number of the people that they quoted as contemporaries are deceased, and they've gone to the Great Seder in the sky. And
The upstairs
there's
The shawarma mats out
right,
there?
Seder Shabbat. But there's something really beautiful about it because they really captured not just a time when the Haggadah came out, but our time too, because these texts and these passages have earned their space in the Haggadah by virtue of saying them over and over again. And, we look forward to seeing certain ones, skipping over certain ones. There are a few that I remember, and I haven't looked at the Haggadah recently, that are just heartwarming, like the teacher who told kids that they couldn't interrupt, but every time they'd ask a question, he'd throw them a piece of candy. And, it's really a beautiful thing.
So in a sense, telling is about reacquaintance, and kind of. I mean, I
Seeing
want to.
old friends, I would put it.
Yeah,
Yes.
the metaphor. I'm putting on an old leather jacket. I feel a great comfort in that.
Well, it's an old Kittle, but yeah.
I mean, I feel, by coming into. I mean, I have a custom at my seder. From time. I have old Haggadot that were used by my grandfather, an old Haggadah from a not a particularly valuable one, but it was his. And
We
I
used
like
the
touching.
Maxwell one
I like
growing up.
touching. I like holding it in my hand and remembering what a Seder was, 50 years ago when I was a kid, and thinking about my grandparents' basement in Montreal, and then starting the Seder at 6 o'clock so that we could finish it by 8, so we can watch the Stanley Cup playoffs. You know.
So my favorite Haggadah is the Goldschmidt Haggadah.
Yes, of course. It's a beautiful
And
commentary.
we hardly ever get to the Haggadah because I love the commentary. It really is very rich.
Jeremy, when,
You
when you think about
know,
telling, I mean, just free associate here, just,
you know,
or,
I one time had occasion to be talking to the novelist Jonathan Safran Foer when he was putting together his New American Haggadah, and he was like frustrated, and he said, "But it's the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. There's no story in this book. Uh, the Haggadah is not a narrative. Like if what we really wanted to do was tell the story of the biblical Exodus, we should just open the Tanakh. Um, and in fact, that's not what we do because it isn't, I think, about the narrative of these great, amazing events or engaging with that particular text, powerful though that is. And I do think that if you're having two seders, it is advisable to shake it up a little bit the second night. But it's all about v'higarta levincha bayom hahu. You have to connect your child on that day. There's going to come a time, and I do feel like we experience this when people are much more tenuously connected to the meaning of Jewish life. So you shall tell your child on some future day um, that that their life is part of a narrative which is far beyond their life. It happened long before they will ever be born. They were ever born, long after they will die. I find that kind of salutary knowledge that I am a very, very small link in a very, very great chain. I find that powerful. I'm happy to know this. So rabbinic literature, for those who are not that on the page, can be a tough nut to crack because it ain't a story. It's isolated observations, but what binds them all together is, and I've quoted you, Elliot, many times on this, which is your great observation that the most important symbol in the Seder is you.
yeah,
There's parsley and there's bones and there's
copyright.
eggs, but the most important symbol is you. You are a participant in Am Yisrael and its great endless great endless life. We're you know, we call ourselves the eternal people. Okay, the Azeris also, I'm sure, feel like they're eternal, and the Chechens and the Maoris or whatever. Every
Certainly the
people,
Bosnians and the Serbs.
every ethnicity or every nation is entitled to think of itself in its long history. That's great. But this is our way of talking about ourselves, past, present, and future. Ahad Ha'am has an essay, the great, late 19th, early 20th century Zionist writer. The Avar Ve'atid is the name of the essay, Past and Future. He says, a healthy identity has one foot in the past and one foot in the future as it meets in the present. If you put if you, of all your an old person has feet only in the past and a baby has feet only in the present, but a mature person and a mature people has a foot in the past and a foot in the future as it stands in the present. And that's what I'm aiming for in
Nice.
reading this Haggadah, which is not a narration, but it is an approach to the formation of our identity.
So I'm hoping to be in Israel for Pesach. We'll see if that happens. I have a ticket, and who knows. And I'll tell you something. I'm inspired by both of you in terms of this content. But I'm also, I guess, just having brought up this the choir, and I'm thinking about the role of music and the role of song. And there's so many lovely songs in the Haggadah, and there's so many lovely songs that are at the end of the Haggadah that actually I don't know. I don't know any tunes for Vayihi B'Chatzi Alayla or
No one has a tune for that. You just read it as fast as you
I
can.
understand, but I'll tell you something. I can remember growing up not knowing a melody for Kilo Ya'eh, and I love
There are a
singing
couple
that
of them.
song.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I love singing all the different parts of the Haggadah. And when we have a seder, it's so interesting the way the seder itself is organized, because it goes from speaking to singing to speaking to telling to kind of stopping and eating and nibbling and telling and singing, etc. And the singing part actually is it has the benefit of being the spiritual equivalent of food, because people that sing together actually feel a sense of bond. I mean, there is nothing like being together in a group of people that are singing together. It is just so it is exuberant.
Right. Well, what's interesting is you could sing together where talking in unison doesn't quite have the
Doesn't
same power
work,
most of the time.
right?
And, I remember reading or hearing once that in a certain sense, the Haggadah was a victim of the printing press. Why are the songs in the back? Because they could go wherever you want them. It wasn't that you were supposed to finish the Seder and then start singing these songs. It's that they were there so you could refer to them whenever you wanted to sing a song. And it's really supposed to be interspersed with the rest of the Seder. And that could help people who are looking to get more singing in their Seder
It's
before people leave.
it's hard, as I'm preparing some supplementary stuff for the Seder, and I don't write music, and I don't, I mean, I could find the sheet music for melodies. Not everyone, of course, can read it. In order to teach music, you have to, sit with people. You have to kind of, you know, do it live, basically, or listen to it, and that's not available. So I have as a goal, for me this year as we speak, I'm thinking, learn a new song, Shira Chadasha, and Omar Lefanav Shira Chadasha. The joy of new music would be new emotional material, new emotional settings for Pesach, and I think that might be a good way to challenge our people. I write quizzes and Jeopardy. I have a new edition of this Jeopardy this year. I just put out for the shul. I have my one category is anti-Semites who now rest in pieces. Or how about this? Biblical English. Biblical English. Here's the one. The question is, what is something that's delightful that emerges that you're not allowed to have from a certain biblical story at the beginning of the Bible? It's biblical English. Forbidden fruit. Forbidden fruit. Exactly. And you know what I find? I find using these people love these quizzes because it gives it's little springboards into larger conversations. And
I like this. My shul seder is going to be, we want to. I don't know. Um, I want to not pretend that the world is not in crisis. I don't want the seder to be about Donald Trump or Bibi Netanyahu or the war in Iran, but I don't want to, like, just, this is about Elazar Ben Azariah, and whether you
well,
say
that's important.
so. Our theme for the year is going to be Leil Shimurim. This is the night of watching. We don't know what's going to happen. We are nervously awaiting, and so that'll abut the complicated stuff in the world, but it won't just transplant it all to Mamdani or to Trump or to Netanyahu or whatever. But I think that we could have some fun with, if I make some quizzes.
Right. And the Haggadah promises redemption in the morning and in the coming year, right? Because we conclude Lashana Haba Yerushalayim. And we know from the people that are mentioned in the Haggadah, their lives did not all end well. But when we get together on the Seder night, we hold on to this idea and this gift of redemption to help us through the coming days and weeks.
Can I tell you something amazing? This is mind-blowingly amazing. And so my daughter Odelia is Baderech. She's got all her paperwork in, and if they will just open up the airspace and the consulate of the government of Israel will approve her visa, she'll be on her way to citizenship in Israel. And she thought she would be there in March, and so she works in an anthropology store in Philadelphia, and the boss of the store is a Catholic guy, doesn't know anything particularly about Judaism. And she said to me, "I'm really disappointed. I thought I was going to be in Passover in Israel." And totally innocently, he doesn't know anything. He said, "Well, next year in Jerusalem."
That's amazing.
Great.
What a beautiful, beautiful thing. Well, that's a great way to come to our conclusion here. Next year in Jerusalem, next Shabbat, next week on Parsha Talk. But we want to thank our viewers, our listeners for sharing this time with us. And we're wishing everyone a quiet week, notwithstanding the fact that we had the missile go off during our recording here. I'm just attentive to that. And wishing everyone a beautiful Shabbat, a beautiful Rosh Chodesh, a Chodesh Nisan coming up. And we'll see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bye.